Hey everyone, and welcome to the Loving and Lasting Show. I'm your host, Andy Lyons, and I'm so thrilled you're joining me for another fun and fact-filled episode where we love to dig deep and find out all the best tips, tools, and resources to keep our loving relationships alive and thriving and passionate and intimate. How wonderful is that? I get to talk about the coolest stuff every day. Today, though, I have one of my favorite relationship experts and sexperts joining me. It's the one and only Todd Creager, and he's from the Todd Creager Center for Successful Relationships. How about that for a positive intention? Say hi, Todd, to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Oh, where are you hailing from today, Todd?
Well, from sunny, partly cloudy today, actually, Huntington Beach, California.
Oh, how
It's great.
wonderful is that? Gee, I feel so bad for him. Although it is quite sunny and delicious out here, outside of Boston, where I hang out
I
and
love
sharing the
Boston.
love. Isn't
Yeah,
it? Isn't it a great place, Todd?
it's great.
It
Got to go
is.
back. Got to go back.
It's a lot of fun. I'm going to give you a quick background on Todd, and then we're going to dive right into talking about the long, hot marriage and how to keep that relationship staying hot and sexy and wonderful and connected week after week, month after month, and year after year. So I'm going to put the camera on Todd's wonderful smile while I just read this quick background. Okay, Todd, here you go.
All
So
right.
Todd Creager is a marriage and sex therapist who owns the company, the Todd Creager Center for Successful Relationships in Huntington Beach. But in addition to his thriving practice helping couples and individuals, Todd has consulted with companies and work relationships and speaks on the topics of relationships and sexuality. And he lives, of course, with his wife and two beautiful daughters and has a fabulous life. But Todd, what I always like to know, and before we dive in to all the good stuff, how were you called to this work? How did you know that you wanted to help couples in particular, but that you wanted to help folks? And how did you pursue your passion in this area?
Well, I became a therapist, and as a lot of young therapists, didn't really know what I wanted to specialize in or anything, so I just did my job. And then back in 1988, I took a marketing class, and one of the things he told us to do was to do a demographic study of all the people that we were treating. And I had no clue about this, but 70% of my people were couples. And that's when I started to think, wow, I'm attracting a lot of couples, aren't I? Now, I was in a new marriage for a few years, and so
Mhm.
I'm sure part of it was that was the big deal in my life. But I did have a love for working with couples, and I didn't realize how much I loved it till I paid attention to how many of them were coming in. So I declared it my specialty. I started to get even more training. Then eventually I did training, and then eventually I thought it was a good idea to specialize in sex therapy. So I got into the UCLA School of Medicine's postgraduate program, and I did that for a year, and voila, there I am, marriage therapist, specializing in sex, and especially low sexual desire and how to increase sexual desire. And
Right.
yeah,
And
and
that's
it's
a
great.
And that's a very common thing in many relationships. It's not a gender-specific challenge,
Not at
and
all.
so many things can cause it. But here's what I love about Todd, and this is his clear, you've seen it, you saw it while he was chatting, his passion to help couples and individuals get unstuck and really have the relationship and the life that they desire and dream of. And a lot of times all it takes is a little tweaking, a little push in the right direction, or a little leading into perhaps a different paradigm or a different thought pattern.
Hmm.
So as I often talk about, Todd, is that we here in America, 40 million Americans in relationships are not having sex. They're stuck in a sex rut. And they'd rather, holding hands perhaps, watching television and all of that, but getting intimate, getting physical doesn't seem to be on their radar on the one hand. And on the other hand, there is, a desire there to bring that back to their
Hmm.
relationship. What do you think what has caused this in our country?
I really think my stance is, and in my book I talk about this as well, The Long Hot Marriage, that we really are at the very early stages of evolution in terms of being in a relationship that works. That the good old days weren't really the good old days with couples. Not too many people were truly sexually satisfied in long-term relationships. So I don't think we should beat ourselves up for it. I think we just need to learn and be creative and be original. And people like you and I, we're finding that there are things we could do. And so a lot of it is that we just got to learn that we're reactive. You know, I always say this: we're creative when it comes to art, when it comes to music. Even in our careers, we could be creative, but in our relationships, we're not. I mean, maybe the first 6 months and 10 days. There's a study that showed that for the first 6 months and 10 days, we fall in love, and then that's the median age where we fall out of love in a committed relationship.
Wait a minute, did you get 6 months? I was like being
11 days.
Guess, optimistic. Yeah. I'm thinking it was 18 months, but 6 months? Yikes.
Well, it's a median age. For some it's longer, for some it's less. But once they make the commitment, it's the 6th month and 11th day you fall out of love. It's kind of a silly study. I don't think it was a great study. But the point is that they fall out of love, and that's not a big deal. But for other people, they think it's the end of the world. Right. But what we haven't seen is couples learn how to navigate and deal with pain so that they both are honored, they both feel affirmed. It's very possible. We just haven't seen it. We've seen people just reacting to each other and not being creative. So I talk a lot about the importance of being interpersonally creative. In other words, how can I express myself, for example, maybe my disappointment or my frustration in such a way that we stay connected? Because for most of us, as the pain comes up, which is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
We get disconnected, and little by little, maybe the woman first usually loses her sex drive when she feels disconnected. Sure. Or the man feels judged, so he starts to put his walls up. Mm-hmm. So they have these walls up, and so what happens is we've learned to protect ourselves and protect our ego, and that kills off our sex life. And that's why I think is what happens. And we haven't learned how to stay open, but we can. Mm-hmm. We can.
And you talk about that in your book in the 2nd chapter, about what happens to folks. They start off with a perception of their partner, right, which is just delicious, but now we know in 6 months and 11 days that perception can start to shift.
That's right.
And so what happens, and how can we, I know, because I know that we evolve as individuals, so of course we're going to have some perception shift, but yes, how can we keep that framed positively?
It's a great question. Again, this whole word of or phrase of interpersonal creativity is the one that keeps coming up in my head. And we actually have to be creative in how we think, And I'll tell you that never ends, because I'm going to be married. It'll be 30 years in August, and we never, we become conscious over time. And I've grown up a lot, but I'll tell you something, I got more to do. And so my wife was frustrated with me. We had some issue about our 18-year-old that came up, and usually that's what goes on. It's usually some kid-related thing. I don't like the way she handled it, and she thinks I undermined her, and she thinks I made her look bad. And she said to me, you've been just very judgmental with me about this and other things, and it's been since early on. And my first initial impulse was to defend myself and saying, no, I'm a great guy, look at me. But I didn't this time, and I stopped and I thought, and I actually slept on it. And the next morning I woke up and I went, I've been so judgmental of her about certain things, and here I am. We've had a good marriage.
Yeah.
We've had a passionate marriage, but we've been having some rough spots like everybody else does. And I'm realizing this is what's coming up, especially as my last child is about to leave. So the thing is, I have to get creative now. I have to start to go, wow, I go around judging her about certain things, so how can I deal with that differently? I could share my feelings, but how can I perceive her, and it's not that hard to perceive her in a positive light. It's just to be aware of my automatic negative perception, and then I'm going, oh my God. And then I shift into all the wonderful things about her, and I also recognize that judgment is my stuff, not hers. It kind of dissolves. Suddenly I'm feeling so in love with her again this week. It's amazing.
Oh.
So what I'm saying is, this is people married 30 years almost, that this is something we need to continually do, is be aware of what our automatic stuff that gets in the way. And then what I mean by creative is, I better think about her in a way that makes me like her.
Yeah.
It's really more up to me than her, because she's all right. None of us are perfect. She's just fine.
Well, first of all, I have to, congratulate you on taking the criticism and stepping back from a normal
Yes,
reaction for men, because men do not like to be criticized, gals. Just if you really want to be
absolutely.
able to communicate clearly and beautifully with your darling man, you've got to find usually a different modality. But,
Absolutely.
but because
Absolutely.
this is Todd's work, he's doing a good job to sit back and say, okay, is this right? Is this true? And be more of the observer.
That's
But
right.
and I also, Todd, I love your creative approach. And one of my favorite examples is Molly Apple, who's with Joe Dunn. They wrote The Soulmate Experience. They're a great
Hmm.
couple. They do couples counseling as well. Joe always leaves the cap off the toothpaste. And so her creative solution for that was to say to herself, instead of pulling her hair out and being annoyed and yelling at him for the 100th time, she said, now there's an example of my darling man and a reminder of how grateful I am to be in this wonderful relationship with him, and just a reminder of what I think is fabulous about him. Thank you." And I thought,
That is so
wow,
great.
that's
That
a
is
real
so.
shift in perception, right?
Oh, it is. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's what we have to look at. We can look at things negatively, and we suppress it, and it interferes with everything that's wonderful and
Right.
everything that's yeah. So the fact that I get frustrated with my wife because she was asking too many questions to my daughter and driving her crazy, I started to think about how amazing it is, what a tuned-in mother, how caring she is, how involved she is. Just
Oh,
that's true too.
yep.
That's really it.
Now, we were talking earlier in the green room about some of the things that can set couples off. Kids, we love our children, love them to pieces. They're
Right.
such a gift to our lives. But when you have two different people coming together to parent,
Yes.
lots of stuff can come up. And do you work with couples on that as far as how to communicate on the parenting challenges?
Absolutely, that's a big issue. I mean, money, sex, and parenting. And parenting is huge. I mean, one person thinks the other one's too easy, the other one thinks the other one's too strict. They're both offering something valuable, and they have to develop an appreciation for the differences and learn from each other too.
Right.
We have to learn from each other that there are certain strengths, for example, one's partner may have that I don't have. My wife, for example, that I don't have, and certain strengths I have that she doesn't, and we need to learn to be open to all that good stuff. So now you got the best of both. But typically people just take their positions and fight, and that's what we try to shift them out of. Yeah.
Right, and of course, it's always when I get in the car with my darling man, we have completely different driving styles, and
Uh-huh.
also I'm a very efficient and effective strategist, so I know where I'm going, how I'm getting there, and you can bet it's the shortest, most efficient route. And my husband gets, and yes, I know the street names and the routes, and my husband gets into the car, and I mean, seriously, he's pulling out of the driveway, and he's really not clear yet which way he's going. And he's
Oh,
a very smart man, but that is not a priority for him, is the how to
right.
get there. And
Yeah.
so we get into a lot of troubles there. So any suggestions? I'll get some free advice from you.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I had this one couple that for 10 sessions or so in a row, that was they'd come and she drove because she liked to drive and she didn't go the way he wanted it to go. Here's where I look at it. I look at it, I talked about it interpersonal creativity. I also talk about developing emotional muscle. And that's another phrase, one of my favorite phrases. And I say that if I want to work out, which I do, I go to the gym. I do weights, I lift, I do the cardio for my heart muscle, right?
Yep.
Well, a committed relationship, marriage, committed relationship, is a phenomenal gymnasium to develop emotional muscle. So if I'm going around with the mindset of I want to be comfortable, I want to have my way, I'm going to be one miserable partner. But if I frame it as, oh, this is a gymnasium, this is a gym where I get to develop emotional muscle, when my partner criticizes my driving, oh, there's my opportunity. There's my opportunity to relax, accept the person's criticism and say, thanks for sharing, honey, but I'm driving too bad. I'm going my way, or whatever, but have a sense of humor about it. So now I have developed a little bit more muscle. I'm a little stronger. I'm not letting myself be thrown around like tumbleweed just because my partner said something that triggered me. So to me, that's the biggest thing, is just to accept the challenge, just like anything.
I agree. So when people come to work with you, how does this happen? Do they come as individuals? Will they come as couples? I'm just curious about that.
Usually that's good. Usually it's just couples. Usually, not always. I mean, I've had people come as individuals, and I might just work with one individual, and that works. Well, I've worked with single people too, of course, but even those in a relationship, might help them. Just working with them as an individual could help the relationship. But more times than not, I'll see the couple together, or I'll see one person and then I'll say, "Bring your partner in. Let's get to this quicker. Let's do it." I just, it's quicker when both people are on board. But it is possible to change a relationship with one. There was a book
Wow.
that came out back probably 20 years ago. It was called "It Takes One to Make a Marriage," and which is a funny title because we always say it takes two to tango and all that.
Right, right.
But yes, that's true. But also, if I shift, well, my wife's going to come along, right?
Yeah.
If I'm creative, she can't keep doing the same thing. What I'll do with people is I'll start to ask a person, if I'm doing a seminar, I'll say to the woman, "Can I dance with you?" To the husband, "Is that okay?" And we start doing this foxtrot, and I start foxtrotting, and I say how I hate this dance. It's a boring dance, and I keep doing the same thing. And after about 30 seconds, I change, and I start to dance like a little rock and roll. She never stays in the foxtrot position. That would look silly. She either joins me, or she looks at me like I'm crazy and sits down. But my point always is, you see, if I complain, but I keep doing the same dance steps, what's the use? But once I change my dance steps, she has to change her dance steps. She's not going to stay in the foxtrot if I break into a rock and roll or whatever. I
Yeah.
pretend to know what I'm doing. But yeah, that's really so
And
that's kind of it. But yeah, mostly it's couples that come in and we go right for it, and I help them look at what their triggers are,
yeah,
help them understand their past only to the point where they can start. We don't really focus so much on the past, but we understand what's going on in the present that has to do with the past, and then help them develop a better attachment to each other,
I
right?
love
So,
that.
yeah, because the people that tend to get anxious and expect the worst, they'll do that with their partner. If they had a family where there was no talking and no sharing, and they learned to close themselves down, well, with them, I got to find their feelings. I had a couple came yesterday. Well, he's an engineer. I don't know how you're going to deal with him. He's totally closed down. I'll deal with him. Give me your engineers. Give me those engineers. I'll help them find the feeling. Let me tell you.
Oh my God,
They're in
that's
there.
something I would have said. I feel terrible, guys, gals who are engineers. I'm so sorry.
No,
And but
we'll find their feelings, and we'll
I
do it,
love
and we'll,
that.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to turn them into, uh, emotional, whatever, Casanovas.
Yeah,
But if they could change enough that finally, the wife goes, "Wow, I'm getting to know this guy from the inside out," or "Wow, because
right.
this particular woman was complaining that how insensitive he was to her hospital stay,
Hmm.
now he wants to have sex. I don't want to have sex with this man. The
Right.
problem is he came from a family where nobody connected emotionally.
Hmm.
So he can't give her attention for her emotions when he doesn't give himself attention for his emotions. So much of the session we started talking about finding where his feelings are. And they're there. And
I
he's not
love
going to be
it.
able to give what he can't get. So
Right. No,
that's what,
and of course, women are aroused by how they feel, just saying.
oh,
And
yeah,
so the emotions can be very, very important. And I know you talk a
yes,
lot about this in your wonderful book, The Long Hot Marriage. But your specialty, as you said earlier, is libido
yes,
and dealing with the different libidos and how to rekindle. Because, as you said earlier, that our emotions and other things can get in the way as well as medications and
yes,
physical challenges to
yes,
keep us and prevent us or cause a low sex drive. So
yeah.
how do you begin working with that, Todd?
I've given many talks to a lot of physician groups too on this, as well as therapy groups and working with people. And we have to do sort of like a car mechanic. You got to check under the hood to see what's there. So I do have to look at and rule out physical things, and I incorporate doctors and chiropractors and endocrinologists if I need be. But most of the time, it's not a physical thing. Sometimes it is, and it's good to rule it out. But a lot of times, what has happened is there's a couple that used to be passionate, and then over time, that passion deteriorated because the emotional connection deteriorated, or they had kids and they got out of the habit, and they've become two roommates or two very functional financial partners, but they lose that. They're oftentimes, in my book I talk about too, that they slip into parent-child patterns where one person feels more like the parent and the other person feels like the child, and that we don't like to have sex with our parents.
No.
As a general rule, most of us healthy people don't like that. So it starts to shut down, whether it's a mother-son pattern or father-daughter, or it changes off. So what I do is I help them be aware of that pattern, and you could shift out of it by recognizing, oh my God, this is my partner who's not trying to nag at me, who needs me. Let's say it's the man who sees the wife as a nag. And I always say to the man, the wife has never nagged you. Never, ever, ever. It just feels that way. Ever. And they go, what are you talking about? Your woman has needs, and you're not meeting those needs. You're giving from your strength. But your weakness, let's say the engineer, is you need something feeling inside of you. So you're giving, you're providing, you're doing this, you're doing that. It's like taking a child who hasn't eaten all day and they're starving, and you take them and say, you can buy anything you want in Toys R Us. And they are still in a bad mood because they have to eat. It's like you got to give her what she really needs at the moment. Anyway, but
I love that example.
But yeah, it's like once the people start to tune into what the other person really needs, once they realize, oh my God, I got to give from my weakest link, but I don't have to be great at it, but I got to give a little bit more, then the relationship starts to open up, the woman's heart starts to open up, and the other bodily part starts to open up too. And so that's the connection between it, because that's really, libido opens and expands when both people feeling more close, and they've created some intensity, and they've let go of their self-protective fight or flight things that they always do, and they do something different, right? When I'm dancing and I change my steps, I'm doing something different. So I help them do something that scares them, but not that much. We take it a step at a time.
Okay, well, of course, now I have to go, okay, like what? What do you give them? What kind of assignment do you give them to scare them?
I'm just thinking, I have a couple who's 71. They've been married since they were 20.
Wow.
They're 51 years married. They came in that there's definitely not enough passion. He came from a family, there's another situation, where feelings were not expressed. He's very serious person. His homework assignment last week was to do a strip tease for his wife. You're a young 70-year-old.
Wow.
He needed to do a strip tease. The funny thing is I said it to them as they were going on the way out, and there was another therapist in my office with another client, and she said, and she heard me say that on the way. I was just, remember, you're going to do a strip tease for your wife. And she said, can I have him as a therapist? It was the funniest thing, But that was that was so funny. But yeah, that for him was a stretch. And it was to break out of that seriousness, to be playful, and to act opposite his reflex. So that was one thing I had him do. I've had couples just commit to 10 minutes a day, sitting down and just looking at each other and touching without the goal of sexual orgasm, just to stay connected, because they need to touch and connect and not just be so goal-oriented when it comes to touch. So I've done that. I've had people look at each other in my office. That's hard, to just look at each other. A couple that have been disconnected, just look. Oh, and then I might have them express something important, and as soon as they say the feeling word, they turn away. I said, no. Say it again, but stay with your eyes on that person. It creates some anxiety, but they're developing the muscle, and it starts to shift the relationship. And that's what you have to do. Doing this work, you can't just have them talking to me. They have to do something different with each other to experience, wow, I could do that. And, I'll say one more thing, too. Think about when in the beginning of relationships where there's passion and excitement, they're always in a risky place. They don't know if the person's going to approve of them. They're opening up. They're revealing, right? Well, when they stop risking, that's when the libido eventually dies. When they start risking by opening up, sharing, trying something new, making the relationship more fresh, well, then libido can return because it didn't disappear.
Right.
It just gone down.
Yeah, and that's a very important thing to remember, folks, is that your kernel of lust is always there inside you, waiting for you to flame it to life.
I love
And
it.
a lot of things that Todd and other relationship experts talk about, this reconnection, this ability to be vulnerable with each other again and to
Yes.
risk, I'm telling
Yes.
you, it can be that night that you guys go home and
Oh.
have a remarkable experience. I'm sure you've seen that, right, Todd?
Yeah, I always say that, people say, how long is it going to take for me to make a change? I said, well, immediately and forever. Because you do something different, it changes, and then you got to
Right.
practice it forever.
Hmm.
It's not always a slow change. It's doing something like this guy came in Monday and he didn't do it. He didn't do the strip. He did a few things. He didn't do that though. So guess what his homework is this week? It's again. Next he's going to do it because he's not going to want to come in and people resist. When the moment he does it, I'm telling you, if he's done it hopefully already, because it was what's today? It was 3 days ago already. So hopefully he's done it. And if that happened, that changed their relationship.
It
It
will. It
changed right
absolutely
then and
will.
there.
And so often, especially in our American society, we say, "Oh, it's not working out. Divorce. Next."
Um,
And it's
and it's two people living in their comfort zone giving up. I go,
right.
let's get you out of your comfort zone, and then if you still want to break up, but you've tried some things, you experimented, fine. But 9 times out of 10, they experiment and they go, oh, this is fun. This is a page turner. I want to see how this book ends. I'm going to go to the end of this book.
I
You know.
love that. It's a page turner. I also want to return back to something that Todd was talking about how easy it is, especially as parents, to become financial, strategic partners. I mean,
Oh,
you're rocking it. You're finishing each other's sentences, your teammates on
right.
getting dinner ready and the kids picked up. And gosh, it's amazing. But seriously, the glue that holds your relationship together is the pleasure part. It's
Yep.
the only thing you can have with this beloved person is this
Yes.
wonderful pleasure and the touching. And one of the techniques I love to share with couples, Todd, is the try to go longer than 10 seconds with your kiss the next time, whether it's goodbye or
Right.
hello. Just
Right.
stay with it. And yeah, you can bring your critical brain into the moment to analyze it, but you will feel sensations changing with your darling. I don't care if you're still peeved
Right.
or you're not getting along. I'm right, the
Oh,
10-second plus kiss.
Oh, I so agree. I mean, first of all, kissing is so intimate and so crucial. Kissing is the best,
Yeah.
and along with everything else. But kissing is so amazing. And if yeah, I sometimes it's funny you said that. Talk about I stole this from David Schnarch, who was an author who's written books like Passionate Marriage, and he talks about hugging till relaxed, which means that there's always one person that's going to break off the hug or the kiss before the other, right? There's always one who's a little. So that person needs to, okay, this is my comfort zone. Hug a little longer, or what you just said, kiss a little longer, relax into it, and just extend yourself. Get out of your comfort zone. Kiss a little longer, hug a little longer. So yeah, I talk about that too. That's great. It's
It
very
is.
true.
It's so important. And your relationship is worth it because remember, divorce rate for second marriages is in the 60s, and for
Yep,
third marriages, it's in the low 90s. So work it out with this person you fell in love with, that you may have children with, because it can get better and greater and deeper and more intimate. And of course, you go through yucky times. That's what you
right,
wouldn't knock it about your business. If you were having a tough time with your business, you'd
right,
persevere, you'd figure out, you'd go find the tips, tools, and resources to turn it around. It's the
exactly.
same in your relationship. Reach out to someone like Todd who can help you take your relationship to a deeper place, because that's what you're in a partnership for, is to learn from each other and grow. And you actually talk about this in the Long Hot Marriage, right, Todd, about
Oh,
how the whole sexual thing and the relationship is all about personal growth.
it's all about personal growth, exactly. And the sexual area is a really rich area where we could grow because it does take courage and does take vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I always say we underutilize the beauty of marriage, that there's a certain freedom in marriage or committed relationship. I know single people go, oh, that's the end, of your freedom. No, it's not. It's the end of freedom in one way, of course, but in a bigger way, it's the beginning of freedom. I can't. take. I can't risk with a person I'm just getting to know as much as with my wife
Right.
over years and years. I can't show her my vulnerable places. I might not be able to share a secret sexual fantasy because on the second date it's not. But these are things that we could risk. But when people don't risk in their marriage or their committed relationship,
Right.
then they're underutilizing their partner in a way. And so I help them to utilize their partner for their own growth and their own expansion, and that's it.
I'm gonna tweak that. We underutilize the beauty of our marriage.
Yes.
Wow, thank you, Todd. I also and folks, this is somebody as you get to understand how to be vulnerable, you also learn that you're having emotionally safe sex. Meaning you can trust this person that you're with, that they will cherish you and hold you and love you in spite of maybe your kinky fantasies. It's okay. They're fantasies.
Exactly it.
It's okay to share those, right, Todd?
Well, that's the key. I have so many couples come in with problems of infidelity, and I have a very, very high success rate with them. And the reason that is because I help them understand that that's a symptom, and a lot of times it's the symptom of people hiding their shadowy sides. And if I could bring my shadowy side, my kinky side into the relationship, and I understand there's a process, and I understand that's scary, and I understand some people will refuse to do that. But if they can become the kind of partners, I call this creative monogamy, where they can share their shadow with their partner and becomes that safe place. I like what you said, emotionally safe sex. That is such an aphrodisiac.
Yeah,
To be
it
able
really is.
to share all that part of me, not just the part of me that looks great and wonderful and has my act together, but these other parts of me too,
Right.
with
And
my
a lot of
partner.
times, yeah. And more often than not, it is a fantasy. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to go out and do that five-some. I mean, you got to, when it's over, what do you do? But it can be a wonderful fantasy that you share with somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I'm not up to that many people yet, but I'll work my way up maybe. Yeah. No,
well,
that's
I
true.
mean, whatever it is, what I'm trying to say is,
Right.
bring in the scarves, the handcuffs, do a little bondage,
Right.
do a little domination and submission.
Sure.
It's all good, and it can all stir up things that really bring you closer together as a couple in a safe way, in an honoring way, and in a cherishing way. Todd,
Mm-hmm.
how do folks reach you, and how can they work with you? And do they have to be in the Huntington Beach area to work with you, or?
They're great questions. Well, first of all, the last question, the answer is absolutely not. I work with Skype, and I'll probably discover other mediums. Right now, I'm using Skype a lot, and I have many clients that throughout the English-speaking world, really, that connect with me, and
Right.
we meet, and it's almost as good as being there, because once I see them, I can work with them, whether it's one person or both people. That works
Right.
really great. My quickest way, of course, I'll give you my website. It's www.toddcreager.com, and I'll spell it. It's TODDCREAGER.com. And my email is simple. It's todd@toddcreager.com.
Wonderful. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and everything else is there. My
fine.
phone number, and on there
Yeah.
you have videos and articles and blogs and all
Yeah.
kinds of great information. Infidelity resource page, a sex resource page.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's all there, of course, and his wonderful book, The Long Hot Marriage. Read it. You'll love it. You'll see where you can start transitioning and shifting into a more creative couple in how you communicate and how you touch and how you resonate with each other in life. Any last words for folks, Todd, before we wrap up our conversation?
Well, I'll tell you that when my book came out, which has now been a few years, I have a new one coming out, but not quite yet, so I'm not quite talking about it yet. But when my book came out, I told my brother it's coming out. The name of the book is called The Long Hot Marriage, and my brother said, "Oh, I didn't know you were writing a fairy tale." You know what? That's no fairy tale.
No, it isn't.
If we do the same things as our parents, yes, it's a fairy tale. But we are so free to try and experiment with new things and new behaviors and new thinking, like I even said. And as we try new things, anything's possible. To have a passionate, long marriage, committed relationship, same-sex, heterosexual, whatever it is, it's totally possible. And definitely,
I love that.
I'm more optimistic now than I was when I started 30-something years ago doing this work. So that says
Oh,
something.
That's so wonderful. And he's right there to help you. Todd Creager at toddcreager.com. You can see it right there on his lower third, as we refer to it here in Google Plus land. But thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so
You're
grateful for
welcome.
all this great information. As a woman who's been with her darling man for 28 years, it's my second marriage, and for a second
Wow,
marriage for both of us.
that's
But
great.
we were able to overcome a lot of obstacles and still grow deeper and deeper in love and find
Wow.
better ways to express it and use our words. And that's not to say, folks, that we don't have ridiculous petty fights. I mean, stupid as the day
Oh no.
is long, but at least we can step back and go, okay, we're fighting because we're trying to communicate better. We're fighting because something's not working. We're fighting because we triggered something in the past. So I
Right.
always just want to encourage those of you watching, please keep working on your primary relationship like you would anything else. It's so important, and it can bring such joy and love and fulfillment into your life. I want to say mwah to all my regular viewers. I know you're going to be watching this and going, wow. And I'm so grateful that you tune in and turn on with me here in the Loving and Lasting Show. And I'm so grateful. Let's have Todd wave one last time. Bye, Todd.
Take
Thanks for
care.
joining me today. And thank you, everyone. And remember to keep deepening the love, deepening the intimacy, and deepening the sexual connection with your beloved self and your beloved partner. This is Andy Lyons saying mwah to everyone. Thank you so very much for tuning in.